Hello everyone, and this is Nele speaking for the Girl with the Curly Hair project, and I would like to talk to you about some tips that may help you recognize emotions when you have autism or when you have a partner, child, or loved one with autism. These tips may help you so they can recognize emotions and you can help them recognizing their emotions. It's generally known that recognizing emotions for someone who has autism is very difficult. Why is this? I'm going to use a visual example to explain this. Let's say, emotions are a beach and the sea and the waves coming in. Most people, when they walk on the beach and they feel a wave coming over their feet, they will feel it and they will notice it and they will be able to place it. I'm standing in the water, my feet are getting wet. I can either step aside so my feet won't get wet anymore, or I can go for a swim. This is how you recognize emotions. An emotion occurs, you recognize it, and you're able to connect it to a certain situation. And based on that, you can decide what action to take. For someone with autism, it's a bit different. They're walking on the beach just like you and everyone else, but rather than a wave coming over their feet, they're hit by a tsunami. This tsunami, all they can think about is to get on top, to get some air. And this is how emotions are experienced with someone with autism. They're completely overwhelming, and all they see around themselves is water, but they can't place it, they can't connect it to a situation, and all they want is to survive. And this makes it very difficult to recognize a situation, to recognize an emotion, connect it to a situation, and act accordingly. And this is why it's so important to help someone with autism recognize their emotions or offer them tools and methods to help recognize it, because it's so very difficult. Even when you do offer these tools and methods, it's not sure that they will be able to apply them or that it will work. Every person with autism is very individual and unique, and they all have their own needs and wants, so this might not be applicable. The first step is to keep some visual tools. Most people with autism, not everyone, but most people, are visual thinkers. When they experience an emotion, they can see it in color or hear a tune with it, or see it in pictures. That makes it very difficult to communicate what you feel. How you can help is to just, for example, take a magazine, flip through the pages, and when you see a certain picture or the ASD loved one sees a certain picture, ask them what emotion that they would connect to it. Angry, happy, sad. Just keep it very simple and basic. They might connect a whole different emotion to it than you will. For example, you might see a picture with a family going out for a picnic and it's very happy for you. Your ASD loved one might attach sad to it. Listen to them, why they think it's sad. Don't dismiss how they feel. Other helpful tools may be one of those emotion thermometers. You can make one very easy yourself, or you can just Google it on Pinterest. You will find images of that where it reaches from calm to enraged. And that way, the loved one, the ESD loved one, can just indicate where they are at the thermometer at that specific time. Again, they might not be able to indicate it at that specific point in time, but at a delayed time, they may be able to say, I was feeling that at that specific moment. Be open to that. Also, when you have someone who has synesthesia, so they can see colors, for example, for emotion, you might want to ask them what color they're feeling at that same time. So if you see they're very stressed and they're feeling purple, make sure you keep a scrapbook where you put the color purple and you write under stressed. They might also see different types of color for one emotion, depending on the situation. It's not the easiest to figure out, but it will help you in the long run. It does require some patience, but it will help you in the long run. Secondly, what really helps is asking specific questions. How are you feeling? Is not going to help anyone because they simply do not know. It's a very overwhelming question for someone who's already overwhelmed and might just trigger them into a shutdown or meltdown. Specific questions maybe, let me give you an example. Libby is 15, has autism and comes from school. She comes home and she just throws her backpack into the room. Mom asks, "Why are you upset?" And Libby screams back, "I'm not upset." And then Mom goes, "Well, obviously you're upset because you're yelling at me." And Libby goes, "I am not upset," goes up to her room, doesn't come out for an entire night. Here you already determine beforehand what the emotion is that the person with ASD is feeling. And this may be very threatening because at that point, the person with ASD doesn't know what they're feeling yet. And you're telling them how to feel. So that's very threatening and feels very unsafe. A better way is to ask very specific questions, not why or how, but what. And very open questions, but in a very specific way. I know this sounds difficult, but bear with me. I will just use the example with Libby and her mom again. So rather than the previous questions, Mom can ask, "It seems to me that you're feeling upset. Am I right about this?" Libby can answer with yes or no, very specific. She answers, "I don't know." And Mom decides to go a bit further. "Did something happen to you at school today that made you feel unhappy or uncomfortable with yourself?" Yes. "Can you explain to me what happened?" No or yes. Asking yes/no questions takes practice because mostly we're just used to having very open questions. How are you feeling? Why are you feeling this way? And it's very easy for other people to determine why and how they're feeling. When you have autism, it's not. You can indicate that you feel that they may be stressed or angry or jealous, but don't determine it for them. Ask them if they're feeling angry and if you are right about this. It's much more friendly than telling them you're jealous, which is much more offensive, and they might react hostile to that because they simply don't know how they're feeling themselves. What also is very important in trying to determine emotions is giving them time to process. We've already discussed this in my blog and vlog about emotional delayed processing or delayed emotional processing, is that emotions, because they're so overwhelming, need time to process. Let's go back to the example with the tsunami. When you're hit by such a wave, all you can think about at that time is to get out of the water, because all you see is water. So you have to wait until the water sinks away, till you're back on the beach, before you can actually start to process what happens, and this takes time. It's like that for emotional processing. You have to process so much, and your brain often decides to process the purely factual sensory input first because it's most important to your survival. It's only after that that you start to process the emotional response to it. And this can take some time. This can take days, but it can also take weeks. And I want to illustrate this with an example from my own life. When I was dating someone, we were going to a park and I had pledged for certain rules because I was in the middle of exams and I wanted to be home at a certain time and other things. The guy I was dating didn't keep to any of those rules. So I became very overwhelmed emotionally. The tsunami hit me and I started to just process the purely factual information and shut down my emotions because I was unable to deal with them at that moment. It was only 3 weeks later that I was able to say I was definitely not okay with this. It really stressed me out and I was very angry with you for not keeping to the rules that were very important to me. If you have someone with autism in your surroundings, this can be very difficult because for you, the event and situation that has occurred has had your emotional response and you were able to act accordingly. So the whole event has been closed off for you, but not for the person with autism. So they're still dealing with that, and it may be difficult to reopen emotions, situations, events that you thought were way behind you again. But keep in mind that they're still very, very, very real for the person who has autism. What also helps is keeping a journal of sorts, where you can write in, this event occurred today, we had this and this and this kind of reaction. It's like a food diary, really. You have people with food allergies trying to figure out what they're allergic to or intolerant to. They give food diaries as well, writing down what they ate and what their reaction was. This might help you to determine emotional response to certain situations. It might also help for the person with autism to keep one themselves, where they can see their actual process going through emotions. It can start like overwhelmed, and 3 weeks later, that situation happened and I wasn't really happy because this and this and this and this and this happened. Reading back through that, I can follow their entire process and be able to place emotions better in the future. Quicker, I don't know that, but better, that's for sure. Other thing you can keep in mind is to link it to the body. Even though it is said that people with autism have poor body language, we still portray signs of stress, anxiety, happiness, and so on and so forth. So teaching those signs to someone who has autism is very important. For example, when you feel that your shoulders are going up and your neck is really tight, you can hardly move it, it can be related to stress. Clenching your jaws can be related to stress. Clenching your fists can be related to stress. So learning to recognize those body signals as well may help you to recognize signs and placing the emotions a bit sooner, which will give you peace of mind. Those were my tips to help identify emotions. You will find more of that in my blog on the Girl with the Curly Hair project. And if there are any questions, please let us know. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.